The third Saturday of November, and all of Oklahoma City smells like fry bread and green chile, and the kind of cold that gets into your collar no matter how high you pull it. I did not plan to be here. Danny dragged me out after a 48-hour shift, said I needed real food, said the vending machine on the second floor of Station 7 did not count. I still had my department jacket on. I was running on maybe 4 hours of sleep and a gas station coffee that tasted like regret. The line for the green chili stew vendor was the longest I had seen all year. Hand-painted sign, beat-up folding table. One old man stirring a pot like he had all the time in the world. I was fine waiting. Quiet, eyes half closed. Then the woman behind me said something that knocked the quiet right out of the air. "You look like you just walked out of a building someone set on fire." I turned around. She was maybe 31, red hair loose around her face, green eyes that did not blink when they should have. She was holding a paper cup of hot cider like she had nowhere better to be and no apology ready for what she had just said. "Close enough," I told her. Every other seat at the outdoor tables was taken, so we ended up across from each other by default. We talked in the way strangers talk when neither of them planned on talking. She asked what station. I told her. She did not make a big deal of it the way some people do. I asked what she did, and she said she worked with people carrying things they did not know how to put down. I thought that was a careful way to say something I did not fully understand yet. She kept looking at me, not rudely, but with a kind of steady attention that felt less like curiosity and more like she was confirming something she already suspected. I noticed it. I let it go. When I stood to leave, she slid a small card across the table without explanation. A hand-drawn symbol on the back. A phone number, no name. I looked at it, then at her. "What is this?" "Something for when you get tired of being fireproof," she said. I put the card in my jacket pocket and walked back out into the cold without another word. The Bricktown lights reflected off the wet pavement, and Danny was already texting me asking where I had gone. I told myself the card was nothing. I told myself I would throw it away before I got home. The thing is, I have never been a very good liar, not even with myself. The card was still in my pocket when I fell asleep that night, and it was still there in the morning. I pulled that card out 3 mornings in a row before I admitted to myself that throwing it away was never actually on the table. 32 years with the Oklahoma City Fire Department, decorated twice. Never late. Never rattled. Never the kind of woman who stares at a stranger's phone number like it holds some answer she has been missing. And yet there I was, sitting at my kitchen table at 6 a.m. with coffee going cold, turning that small card over in my hand and looking at that hand-drawn symbol like it owed me an explanation. Ruth caught me with it at the station. She did not say anything right away. Ruth Calloway has this particular talent for letting silence do the heavy lifting. She just raised one eyebrow and waited. "Don't," I said. She grinned anyway. Danny, for once, was oblivious. Small mercies. I did some digging that week. Not proud of it, but I did it. Melanie Rogers, Paseo Arts District, small healing practice out of a studio on a side street with good afternoon light and a hand-painted name on the door. Ceremonial work, grief, trauma. People in the neighborhood spoke about her the way they speak about someone who simply knows things she has no clear right to know. She'd lived in 4 cities in 8 years. Oklahoma City was the longest she had stayed anywhere. I closed the browser tab when I heard Ruth's boots in the hallway. Too slow. "Research," Ruth said, leaning in the doorway. "Drop it." She dropped it. But she was smiling when she walked away, and that was almost worse. I called the number on a Tuesday night. I told myself I would leave a voicemail, feel like I had done something and move on with my life. Melanie picked up on the second ring. We talked for 40 minutes. I cannot tell you exactly how that happened. She asked good questions and did not flinch at direct answers, and somewhere in the middle of it I realized I had not talked to anyone like this in longer than I wanted to calculate. By the end, she had invited me to an evening gathering at her studio. "Something small," she said. "Low pressure." I told her I would think about it. I showed up 2 days later. I did not tell Ruth. I stood outside the studio door in the cold for about 30 seconds longer than necessary. Then I went in. Because I've run into burning buildings for 3 decades, and standing outside a warm room full of strangers was not going to be the thing that stopped me. The studio smelled like burning sage and old wood and something else I could not name. Something low and warm that settled in the back of the throat. Maybe 8 people sitting in a loose circle on cushions and mismatched chairs, all of them younger than me, all of them carrying that particular look of people who have brought something heavy into the room and are not sure yet whether they will be allowed to set it down. I took a seat in the back. I kept my jacket on. Melanie was at the center of it. She spoke in a low, steady voice that did not need to be loud to fill the room entirely. She was not performing. That was the thing I noticed first. There was no performance in her at all. When she saw me in the doorway, she paused. Just one beat, and something moved through her expression that was not surprise. It was closer to recognition, and it unsettled me in a way I did not have clean language for. When the others had gone, she brewed tea without asking if I wanted any and sat across from me at a low table. We talked about fire, about what it does to a person to spend a life standing at the edge of something destructive and choosing to go in anyway. She listened the way very few people listen, without waiting for her turn. At some point, I looked up and realized she had moved from across the table to beside me, and the distance between us had been closing for a while without either of us making a formal announcement about it. She reached over and touched the burn scar on the back of my left hand. Slow, certain. The way you touch something you have already made peace with. I did not pull away. I did not say anything. We stayed like that for a moment that was longer than it had any right to be. And I was aware of her in the way you become aware of a fire in a room, not with alarm, but with the full attention of someone who knows what heat can do. I walked home through the sharp November air feeling like something had been rearranged inside me without my permission. Then, at the corner of a street I walk every week, the world tilted. It was not a dizzy spell. It was something else entirely. I saw 4th and Hudson, clear as a photograph. Smoke coming from the 3rd floor of a building I did not recognize, and Melanie standing in the street below it looking up. Then it was gone. I was standing on the sidewalk breathing carefully, the cold air sharp in my lungs, the streetlights completely ordinary around me. I drove past 4th and Hudson on the way home. I sat in the car looking at the building on the corner for a long time. I did not tell anyone, not even her. The visions did not stop. That was the part I was not prepared for. I kept waiting for it to be a one-time thing, some strange misfiring of an exhausted brain, something I could file away and forget. Instead, they came without schedule or mercy, during a call on a Wednesday morning, in the middle of a meal I did not finish. Once on a training drill, standing 12 feet up on a ladder, and Danny had to shout my name twice before I came back to the present and the cold and the ordinary weight of the equipment on my back. He looked at me afterward with a particular expression of a man who is worried, but does not know how to say it without making everything worse. The fragments were always different but always specific. A door with peeling blue paint, the smell of rain on hot asphalt. Melanie's voice saying something I could never quite make out, just the shape of the words, never the words themselves. I started writing them down in a small notebook I kept in my jacket pocket. The entries were getting longer. I told no one. I was not ready to say out loud that something was happening to me that I did not have a category for. Then Melanie showed up at the station on a Wednesday afternoon with 2 coffees and the expression of a woman who has already made a decision and is only now informing you of it. She sat across from me in the break room and said without any lead-up that something was shifting around me, and she wanted to help me understand it. I told her flatly that I did not believe in any of that. She set down the coffee, looked at me steadily, and said, "Tell me the last thing you saw." I went very still. I had not told her about the visions. There was no version of events in which she should have known to ask that question. The break room was quiet, and the coffee was going warm between my hands, and the silence between us stretched out long enough that it became its own kind of answer. Then things got worse in a different direction. Melanie pulled back, canceled 2 meetings with short, polite texts. Warm from a distance, unreachable up close. I sat with it for 2 days before I admitted it was bothering me in a way that had nothing to do with simple disappointment. Ruth watched me snap at the coffee machine on a Thursday morning and said, "So it's that kind of trouble?" I said nothing. I went for a run at 11 p.m. in 38-degree weather like that was a completely normal and reasonable response to the situation. That night the visions were the sharpest yet. And in one of them, plain as anything, Melanie was crying. The call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Friday. Structure fire, possible entrapment, 4th and Hudson. I was dressed and on the truck before the address finished coming through the radio, and I already knew. The way you know a thing you have been carrying for weeks without admitting you were carrying it. When the truck turned the corner and the building came into view, smoke pouring from the 3rd floor east side exactly where I had seen it, I felt something cold and certain settle in my chest that had nothing to do with the November air. I moved through that building differently than I have ever moved through one before. I knew the east stairwell was compromised before I tested it. I knew the family was in the back, 3rd floor, behind a door that was not on the floor plan anyone had pulled. Danny was calling positions over the radio, and I was already there, already moving, already certain in a way I could not explain and did not try to. We got them out. Mother, father, a small boy who had stopped crying by the time I carried him down the stairs, which was somehow more frightening than if he had kept on. Outside in the cold, Danny pulled off his helmet and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on him before. "That was the most precise call I have ever seen you make," he said. I nodded. I did not offer him anything else. He was a good enough man to let it sit. I was standing at the edge of the scene, the building still breathing smoke behind me, when I saw her. Melanie at the barricade tape, red hair catching the orange light of the dying fire, green eyes fixed on me with an expression I recognized because I had been carrying a version of it myself for weeks. Neither of us moved for a moment. Then she crossed under the tape and walked straight to me and took my face in both hands like she had been planning the gesture since November and was simply done waiting. The kiss was not hesitant. It arrived already knowing where it had always been going, certain and unhurried and completely indifferent to the crew pretending very hard to look elsewhere. Later, in her car with the heater running, and both of us still smelling like smoke, she told me the truth about why she pulled back. She had seen it coming, not as a feeling but as a knowing, the same quiet, persistent knowing she had been living with for years. She had seen me before she met me. She had seen this fire. She pulled away because she was afraid that what she felt was only something fated rather than freely chosen, and she needed to know the difference before she let it matter. I looked at her for a long time in the dark of that car. "And now," I said. "Now I know," she said. We drove back to my apartment as the city settled into the quiet hours between night and morning, the streets empty and slick with cold. The space between us, which had been charged and unresolved for weeks, finally gave way with the soft click of a door closing behind us. What passed between us that night was unhurried and deliberate, the way two people move when they have stopped pretending they do not want what they want. The apartment was warm and the city outside was still, and the hours moved differently than hours usually do. When the first thin light of a Saturday morning spread across the floor, we were lying close together in the kind of quiet that does not need anything added to it, and neither of us reached for our phone, and neither of us spoke yet, because some things arrive already complete. I made coffee in the morning. Melanie sat on my kitchen counter and stole the first cup before I could hand it to her, wrapping both hands around it like it was hers by natural right. It was such an ordinary moment that it nearly knocked the breath out of me. I stood there looking at her in the winter light. Red hair loose, green eyes unhurried, completely at ease in my kitchen in a way that felt less like an intrusion and more like a correction, like something that had always been missing from the room had simply decided to show up. Ruth called. I let it ring once, then picked up because I know Ruth and I know how that particular story ends if I do not. She said only, "You okay?" I looked at Melanie drinking my stolen coffee in the pale morning light. "Yeah," I said. "Surprisingly." Ruth said, "Good, now get some sleep, you look terrible." She hung up before I could answer. Melanie raised one eyebrow. I laughed. A real full laugh that came up without permission and surprised even me, and Melanie smiled over the rim of the cup like she had been expecting it all along. That afternoon we were on the couch, Melanie reading, my eyes half closed against her shoulder, when the last vision came. It was brief and quiet and entirely without urgency, just the two of us in this same room, years from now, older and unhurried, the same low winter light coming through the same windows, the same sense of a life that had chosen itself deliberately rather than simply fallen forward into shape. When it faded, I did not reach for my notebook. I did not need to write this one down. I closed my eyes again and listened to Melanie turn a page, and for the first time in 57 years, the future felt less like something rushing toward me and more like something I was already standing inside, warm and solid and entirely mine.